Greetings, Commanders, Cerebrats, and Executors. In this episode, we will be talking about all the different units that the Zerg have access to. The Lava is a small ground unit with 25 health and 10 armor. You can't build larvae intentionally. Instead, new larvae spawn periodically under hatcheries, lairs, and hives. Each hatchery, lair, or hive can only have a maximum of 3 larvae attached to it. More larvae won't begin spawning from the structure until those 3 already present are used. Upgrading a hatchery to a lair or hive does not shorten the larva spawn time. You can't issue commands to larvae. They move around randomly but always close to the hatchery that spawned them. You can command larvae to morph into other Zerg units, and this is how all Zerg production is done. When you command a larva to morph, it turns into an egg. I'm gonna turn off the speed cheat so we can see an egg for a bit longer. Yeah. Eggs are medium units with 200 health and 10 armor. They only last for a limited time while the requested unit is morphing. Once the morph completes, the new unit hatches from the egg and can be used. If you cancel the morphing egg before the unit hatches, you will be refunded the resources you spent on morphing, but you won't get back the larva that turned into an egg. Once you morph a larva into an egg, that larva is lost. Eggs and larvae both have a lot of armor, which makes them hard to kill quickly. This means they are usually not priority targets when a harassing force gets inside a Zerg base. The drone is a small ground unit with 40 health and no armor. They're hovering units. Drones are the Zerg worker unit, so they are responsible for making buildings and gathering resources. Drones have an attack which does 5 normal damage to ground targets and cannot be upgraded. Drones cost 50 minerals and 1 supply to build. Drones have the ability to burrow once you research the burrow upgrade from a hatchery. The Overlord is a large air unit with 200 health and 0 armor. Overlords provide the Zerg with supply, serving as the equivalent of Protoss pylons and Terran supply depots. Later, they can be upgraded with movement speed, longer sight range, and the ability to transport Zerg units around, all researched from the lair. Overlords are the main Zerg detector unit. All Overlords are detectors by default. This makes it hard for cloaked units to sneak into Zerg bases because there are usually a lot of Overlords about. Although Overlords move very slowly initially, Zerg players start each game with one, and their ability to fly makes them useful scouts early on. You'll often see an Overlord keeping an eye on enemy bases in the first few minutes of a game. Zerglings are small ground units with 35 health and no armor. They attack in melee, doing 5 normal damage per hit to the target, with 1 additional damage per upgrade. Zerglings are always spawned in pairs. It costs 50 minerals and 1 supply to command a larva to morph into a pair of Zerglings, meaning each Zergling effectively costs 25 minerals. To morph Zerglings, you have to own a spawning pool. From the spawning pool, you can upgrade Zergling movement speed, and once you have a hive, Zergling attack rate as well. Zerglings can burrow once the ability is researched from the hatchery. Hydralisks are medium ground units with 80 health and 0 armor. Their attack does 10 explosive damage with +1 per upgrade. Morphing a Hydralisk costs 75 minerals, 25 gas, 1 supply, and requires that you own a Hydralisk den. From the Hydralisk den, you can upgrade Hydralisks with more movement speed and more attack range. Hydralisks can also be upgraded to allow them to morph into lurkers. Hydralisks can burrow once the ability is researched from the hatchery. Lurkers are medium ground units with 125 health and 1 armor. They are created by morphing from Hydralisks rather than the usual Zerg method of morphing larvae. Once the ability to morph into a Lurker is researched, which is done from the Hydralisk den and requires you own a lair, any Hydralisk you command to do so will transform into an egg, similar to when larvae begin morphing, and once the morph time is complete, a Lurker will hatch from the egg. If you cancel the Lurker morph before it finishes, the original Hydralisk emerges from the egg intact. Morphing a Hydralisk into a Lurker costs 50 minerals, 100 gas, and it requires 1 additional supply on top of the 1 supply that the Hydralisk requires to begin with. So, each Lurker is 2 supply, which is why it displayed 2 supply on the Lurker morph button. So a Lurker in total is effectively 125 minerals, 125 gas, and 2 supply, because the cost of the Hydralisk is also involved in getting a Lurker. Lurkers have the ability to burrow immediately, even if you haven't researched the ability for other Zerg ground units to burrow. When above ground, Lurkers do not have an attack, but once burrowed, they can shoot rows of spikes out of the ground at their enemies, doing 20 damage to all enemies hit by the spikes, with +2 per upgrade. Lurker attacks have the ability to hit a lot of enemies at once, making them very strong against large numbers of low-health units like Marines, Medics, and Zerglings. However, the need to be burrowed in order to attack means Lurkers are almost exclusively used for defense, not for attacking into enemy positions. The Mutalisk is a small air unit with 120 health and 0 armor. Their attack does 9 normal damage against ground and air, but the attack also bounces to nearby enemies, hitting other units after the first target. Each bounce deals a third of the previous hit's damage, so after the main attack has done 9 damage to the main target, the first bounce does 3 damage to the second target, and the second bounce does 1 damage to the third target, all provided there are enough enemy units nearby. Each attack upgrade increases the main attack's damage by 1. Attack upgrades do affect the bounces as well, but because each bounce only does 1/3 of the damage the previous one did, the first bounce only gains 1/3 of a damage point per upgrade, and the second bounce only gains 1/9. This means upgrades do so little for the bounces you can basically ignore them. Only when you have +3 attack does the Mutalisk's first bounce do 1 additional damage. Mutalisks cost 100 minerals, 100 gas, 2 supply to morph, and they require that you own a spire. Which, I might not have a basic spire here. Oh, here we go. Here's a spire. They themselves can be morphed into Guardians and Devourers, once you own a greater spire, which we'll talk about later. Scourge are small air units with 25 health and no armor. They are kamikaze units. They collide with enemy flyers and explode themselves to deal damage to those enemies. When a Scourge collides with an enemy air unit, it deals 110 normal damage in destroying itself. This damage is not affected by attack upgrades. They only damage the primary target. There is no area of effect. Scourge cannot attack ground units in any way. They can only attack air units. Like Zerglings, Scourge morph in pairs from 1 larva and 1 egg. Morphing a pair of Scourge out of a larva costs 25 minerals, 75 gas, and 1 supply, and requires an existing spire. Although costing a fair amount of gas, Scourge are almost always cost-effective at killing enemy air units because of how much damage they deal and how many you get. There are 3 main challenges to using Scourge well. First, because they have such little health, it's hard to keep Scourge alive long enough to reach their target, since the target can usually shoot back. So you usually need to send more Scourge than are strictly necessary at each individual enemy flyer. Second, it can be difficult to manage all your Scourge. because you have to build so many Scourge, it's difficult to manage them, especially if you're trying to destroy a powerful enemy air army that has a whole lot of different units and you need Scourge to collide with each individual unit. Third, Scourge can still detonate on an enemy unit which is already dead, if they arrive very soon after. So, even though an Overlord, for instance, has 200 health, you can get more than 2 Scourge to detonate on the same Overlord. The first 2 Scourge will do enough damage to kill it, but the others will still explode as the Overlord is dying. If you command 12 Scourge to attack one enemy air unit, most or all of the 12 Scourge will collide with that unit and die, but only 2 or 3 Scourge are needed to kill most air units. This means that you really need to put a lot of effort into splitting your Scourge up, targeting each group of Scourge on a different individual enemy flyer to get efficient trades with them. And that's really hard to do, especially when the enemy is trying to shoot your Scourge out of the sky as they approach. The Queen is a medium air unit with 120 health and 0 armor. It is a spellcaster, so Queens have no attacks, but they do have several special abilities. They start with access to Parasite and Infest Command Center, and you can upgrade them with Spawn Broodlings and Ensnare from the Queen's Nest, which is here. You can also upgrade Queen Energy Storage from the Queen's Nest. The Queen costs 100 minerals, 100 gas, and 2 supply to build. And of course you have to have a Queen's Nest in order to build a Queen. The Parasite ability costs 75 energy. The Queen fires a blob of green slime at the targeted location, and all units close to that target are covered in green slime. The Ensnare effect slows movement and attack speed for affected units, and it makes cloaked units visible until it wears off. Ensnare lasts for 25 seconds, but can be removed early with the Medic's Restoration ability. Spawn Broodling costs 150 energy. It instantly kills a targeted ground unit and spawns 2 Broodlings where that unit was. Broodlings are small, have 30 health and no armor, do 4 normal damage per hit with +1 per upgrade. They're small, they have 30 health and no armor, they do 4 damage per hit with +1 per upgrade, and will only continue to exist for a limited time after being spawned. Broodlings spawn with an energy bar that depletes over time, and if not killed by the enemy first, will die when their energy reaches 0. Spawn Broodling can only be targeted on biological and mechanical ground units. Probes, Reavers, Archons, and Dark Archons don't count as either of these, and Spawn Broodling cannot be targeted on them. When a Terran command center is below 50% health, a Queen can infest it, replacing the building with an infested Terran command center, which is a Zerg building belonging to the Zerg player who owns that Queen. Like normal command centers, infested command centers have 1,500 health, 1 armor, and can lift off and fly around. However, they regenerate health over time when damaged, and they can only build 1 unit, the Infested Terran. Infested Terrans take 100 minerals, 50 gas, and 1 supply to build, and are built from infested command centers in the normal way for Terran and Protoss units. They don't use larvae like most Zerg units do. The Infested Terran is small with 60 health and 0 armor. It doesn't have a normal attack, but can blow itself up to deal 500 explosive area of effect damage. Infested Terrans can burrow once you've researched the upgrade from the hatchery. Queens are not used that much because their abilities are hard to get enough value out of to be worth making and upgrading. Sometimes they'll be built for Ensnare against fast-moving clusters of enemy units like Wraiths. Sometimes Spawn Broodling will be targeted on valuable ground units like siege tanks. The Guardian is a large air unit with 150 health and 2 armor. It deals 20 normal damage per shot against ground units with +2 damage per upgrade. Guardians cannot target air units at all. Their attack only works against ground units. Guardians are morphed from Mutalisks, requiring a greater spire in order to do so. Morphing a Mutalisk into a Guardian costs 50 minerals and 100 gas in addition to the base cost of the Mutalisk. While morphing, a Mutalisk enters a cocoon, which has 200 health, no armor, and hangs stationary in the air until its morphing is complete and the Guardian hatches. Guardians are notable for their relatively long-range attack, which is able to hit enemy defensive buildings from outside the range at which they can retaliate. The Devourer is a large air unit with 250 health and 2 armor. Devourers do 25 normal damage per attack with 2 additional damage per upgrade. Devourers can only attack air units. They apply an effect called Acid Spores to their target and other enemy units near it each time they attack. Acid Spores can stack up to 9 times. It didn't work on the Guardian because the Guardian belongs to me. It's a friendly unit. But Acid Spores appear as a purple goo on whatever they're applying to. Acid Spores can stack up to 9 times, and for every stack of Acid Spores affecting a unit, that unit's attack rate is reduced, and every attack which hits the unit deals an additional point of damage per stack. Once a unit is affected by Acid Spores, they will keep the unit revealed and visible, even if the unit attempts to cloak, until the spores wear off. Acid Spores last 50 seconds. Devourers are morphed from Mutalisks, costing 150 minerals and 50 gas on top of the Mutalisk's base cost. Like a Guardian, a Mutalisk which is morphing into a Devourer enters a flying cocoon with 200 health and no armor until the morph is complete and the Devourer hatches. The Defiler is a medium ground unit with 80 health and 1 armor. It's a spellcaster, so it has no attack, but it can use a number of abilities. It starts with the Dark Swarm ability, and it can be upgraded with the abilities Plague and Consume. It can also be upgraded to Burrow, similar to Zerglings, Hydralisks, and other ground units. You upgrade the Defiler's abilities at the Defiler Mound. You can also upgrade its energy storage there. Turning a lava into a Defiler costs you 50 minerals, 150 gas, and 2 supply to morph. And of course you have to own a Defiler map. The Dark Swarm ability costs 100 energy and creates an orange cloud on the map, which lasts for 35 seconds. All ground units under this cloud take no damage from ranged attacks, regardless of who owns the attacker or the defender. Buildings under the swarm are not protected. Melee attacks, special abilities, and Reaver and Lurker attacks still do damage under the swarm. Units under the swarm will still take some damage from ranged attacks that do area of effect damage, but the primary attack will not hit them. The Plague ability costs 150 energy and covers all units near the targeted location in red goo. The red Plague goo lasts on affected units for 25 seconds and deals damage rapidly over time. Plague will not kill units, it only reduces them to 1, 2, or 3 health. If the unit is being healed or repaired, Plague will continue damaging it until the unit's health is back down to the minimum or until the Plague wears off. Only once the Plague wears off can you start healing the unit up to full again and not have to contend with that Plague damage. Plague doesn't apply to Protoss shields at all. It just damages the health bar underneath directly. The Consume ability kills a nearby targeted friendly Zerg unit and gives the Defiler 50 additional energy. Any Zerg unit will be killed immediately by Plague, and the Defiler always gains 50 energy regardless of how much health the consumed unit had or how much it cost to build. This means that consuming cheap units, like Zerglings, is ideal. The Defiler is almost always key to late-game Zerg play. Its abilities are very powerful, and it can gather nearly unlimited energy using Consume to cast those abilities again and again to give Zergs big advantages in fights. The Ultralisk is a large Zerg ground unit with 400 health and 1 armor. It attacks ground units for 20 normal damage with plus 3 damage per upgrade and is unable to attack air at all. You can also upgrade the Ultralisk with additional armor, and additional movement speed from the Ultralisk Cavern. Ultralisks cost 200 minerals, 200 gas, and 4 supply to morph from a lava. The Ultralisk is the only Zerg ground unit which cannot burrow. Ultralisks are very durable and form a powerful late-game ground army, but they take up a lot of space, they take up a lot of resources, and while they have a lot of health, there is no easy way to heal them after a battle. So your investment can be lost if the enemy has a lot of damage output. These are all the Zerg units that the Zerg have access to.